2016, I declared, I am your voice. Today I add, I am your warrior. I am your justice. And for those who have been wronged and betrayed, I am your retribution. I am your retribution.
Just what we're all looking for, right? As much as he would like to say that his campaign is, quote, about your retribution, what he means, what we all know he means, is it's about his retribution, his revenge against anyone and everyone who's criticized him, who departed his tent, TP is these days, and who stands in his way of returning to power. There's brand new reporting in Axios that shows that House Republicans just might be providing a blueprint for this. They write this, quote, House Republicans have struggled to show President Joe Biden has done anything illegal. People close to Donald Trump are still plotting to use the Justice Department against Biden and his family. Absent an attorney general that will uphold the rule of law, this is the very kind of situation that former Congresswoman Liz Cheney has warned could pose a serious threat to democracy.
You've said we're sort of sleepwalking into dictatorship in the United States. Dictatorship. Is that what we would have if we reelect Donald Trump?
I think it's a very, very real threat and concern. And I don't say any of that lightly.
Joining our coverage, former Trump White House Deputy Press Secretary Sarah Matthews is back with us. She resigned on the evening of January 6, 2021. She went on to testify publicly before the January 6 Select Committee. Also joining us at the table, former Chief of Staff at the Department of Homeland Security, Miles Taylor's here. He's the author of the newly released paperback edition with a great update for the 2024 election, Blowback, a warning to save democracy from Trump's revenge. You were out, we were talking, Miles, about when you came out as anonymous. When you were still in, right? Or you had just left, and you wrote about the entire cabinet discussing openly the 25th Amendment. Donald Trump is the first ex-president to run without the support of his VP, without the support of any of his cabinet. And with this extraordinary new amicus brief from members of the military warning that he's a threat basically to the world order, to the democracy and to the military. Where is everyone? Where is Kelly? Where is Mattis? Where is Milley? Where is everyone that knows that he's a clear and present danger?
Well, look, I mean, first I've got to say, Nicole, it is remarkable. And to put that into historical context, there is no historical context.
Right.
No president in the history of the Republic has faced this level of opposition from his own team. None. Full stop. That is hopefully significant enough to give Republican voters who are disaffected the air cover they need to not put this man back in the White House. But that means getting those voices actually out there, getting them into a cohort. I have to laud people like Sarah, who's on right now. She showed a lot of courage in a very difficult moment. People like Alex Vindman, people like Stephanie Grisham, Alyssa Farah. You could go on down the list of folks who showed the courage. And now we've got to show that breadth and depth of that cohort in a way that Americans can easily see. Now, I mean, Sarah can attest to this. Both of us want to get those people. Hell, let's just get them all lined up on a stage right here. I mean, I think we could probably fit 50 chairs in this room.
I'll get like a Thanksgiving table, and you can line them all up.
We've got to put them all together. But as Sarah, I'm sure, can attest, some of these folks, incredibly, are still scared. They'll have spoken out, and then they say, I don't know, I finally got a job. I finally got a job after 2 years of not being able to find a job. I'm not sure I want to go out there. And it's about saying to them, look, this is country over party. This is a crucial moment. This is the Republic. And don't worry, we have your back. And also to the people who haven't spoken out, the time to grow a spine is right now, and the clock is ticking. There's not going to be a chance after this election to say, oh, but wait, here's how I felt about him. They have to do that soon. And I just talked to a cabinet member this week, one of the ones from the Trump administration who hasn't spoken out, who's, kind of flirting with the idea of maybe this summer. And I said, what are you doing waiting? You have to go now. You're already years late, but it's not too late for the country for you to do it. We've got to give those folks that platform and that cohort of officials so that they can have the air cover to come out.
Yeah, I mean, Sarah, Sarah Longwell, the Republican pollster running Republicans against Trump, says she's obsessed with permission structures. And this is probably where we are, that frankly, not a lot that's said on this program is going to move a two-time Trump voter into the Biden column. But there are a lot of Trump voters who don't see him as quite as shiny of a penny, if you will, as he was in 2016. Tell me what you hear from people who are reluctant, people like yourself who saw him up close and personal, to come out and come out against him.
I think a lot of people are reluctant to speak out. As Miles kind of mentioned, people are concerned with their career prospects and they worry about going against the grain and speaking out against Trump. And then I think, too, that even if there are people who know that Trump is dangerous and maybe are thinking about speaking out, they do not want to go as far as endorsing Joe Biden then. And I've been someone who has said that if my choices in this election are Donald Trump and Joe Biden, then I will have no choice but to vote for Joe Biden, because to me, it's not a lesser of two evils situation. There is no comparison here. Even if I don't like the policies of the Biden administration, I'm willing to put that aside because I know that Donald Trump is a danger to our democracy and that he is unfit to ever serve as president again. And so I'm going to do everything I can and use my voice and my platform in order to educate the American people about this threat, but that I hope that will inspire other Republican elected officials and former Trump administration officials to feel comfortable to come forward and speak that truth, too, because I think that we have a duty to the American people to educate them on this.
Rick, I mean, in your study of disinformation, it was a study of disinformation in Russia, but we have challenges here, and I wonder how or whether there's a tipping point where it is not possible that all of these people that left are part of some left-wing cabal, right? Is there a tipping point where even the most enthusiastic Trump voter says, maybe it wasn't that great?
It's a good question, and I admire the people who have the moral courage to say that I was wrong. He's a special threat. I don't know if regular voters pay attention to that. I mean, that's why I think the amicus brief is so important, because it also puts how unprecedented Trump is in historical context. Because it talks about how the founders created civilian leadership for the military. That had never existed in the history of the world before. The militaries were obligated to work for the kings or tyrants that they served. Our military take an oath to say, we solemnly swear to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic. There's no other military in the world that takes an oath to the Constitution. The British military still takes an oath to the king. And that comes back around to why he is a special threat, because he sees himself as a king. He's like a 16-year-old boy and thinks, I have the military, I can tell them what to do, I can have them, shoot miles, I can have them get against all my enemies. And it does have some resonance with people who have this grievance. Americans who feel like life has passed them by. So when he says, I am your retribution, he's weaponizing the grievance of these Americans who feel left out, who don't understand these foundational principles that those military leaders said, that he is a unique national security threat, the former president of the United States.
Hey, everyone. MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.